The cold wind moved across the broken land of planet Valaris 7. Burned ships and pieces of metal were spread everywhere. The great battle between the royal fleet and the Dark Swarm had ended only a few hours before. Smoke still rose from the ground. The sky was red from fire and falling debris. The world looked silent, but danger was still hiding in the shadows. Lieutenant Ethan Cole walked carefully through the ruins. He was a human soldier from Earth Expedition Team 7. His armor was damaged, and his communication device had stopped working during the battle. Ethan had been separated from his team after their ship crashed near the battlefield. Now he was searching for survivors before the night creatures came out. Suddenly, he heard a weak sound. It was not the sound of metal or machines. It sounded like someone was breathing with pain. Ethan quickly moved toward the sound. Behind a broken wall from an alien ship, he found a young woman lying on the ground. Her silver armor was cracked, and strange blue blood covered her chest. A glowing symbol on her shoulder showed the mark of the royal family of the Aelorian Empire. Ethan's eyes widened. She was not an ordinary soldier. She was an alien princess. The princess's breathing was slow and weak. Deep wounds covered her body. Small lights from her armor tried to heal her injuries, but they failed again and again. Her life signs on the armor screen were falling every second. It looked like she only had a few minutes left. Ethan looked around carefully. There were no doctors. There were no rescue ships. There was only silence. For a moment, Ethan stood still. He knew nothing about Aelorian biology. Humans had only joined the Galactic Alliance 2 years ago. Most alien races still saw humans as weak newcomers from a small world called Earth. But Ethan could not leave her there. He slowly knelt beside her. "It's okay," he said softly, even though he knew she could not understand his language. The princess opened her eyes for a second. Her glowing golden eyes looked directly at him. Fear filled her face. Humans were almost unknown in her part of the galaxy. Then her eyes slowly closed again. Ethan carefully lifted her into his arms. The moment he touched her skin, something strange happened. A warm feeling moved through his hands. Golden light suddenly appeared around his fingers. Ethan quickly looked down in shock. The light moved from his hands into the princess's wounds. The bleeding slowly stopped. The damaged skin began to close. The broken pieces of armor around her chest started to move as the wounds under them disappeared. Ethan's heart started beating faster. "What is happening?" he whispered. The golden light became stronger. The princess's breathing became steady. The warning lights on her armor changed from red to green one by one. For several seconds, Ethan could only stare in silence. This was impossible. Human medical science could not do this. Alien medical science could not do this either. Yet it was happening right in front of him. Far above the battlefield, a hidden drone watched everything. The drone belonged to the royal fleet. Inside a command ship in orbit, officers suddenly stood from their seats. "Replay the image," one officer ordered. The recording played again. A human soldier held the dying princess. Golden light covered her body. Her wounds disappeared. The room became silent. "Impossible," whispered one scientist. "A human cannot use healing energy." Another officer shook his head slowly. The princess was seconds away from death. The commander stared at the screen. "Find that human immediately." Back on the ground, Ethan noticed that the princess was opening her eyes again. This time her breathing was normal. She looked at her hands and touched the place where the wound had been. There was nothing there. The injury was completely gone. Shock appeared on her face. Then she looked at the human soldier standing beside her. "You saved me," she said quietly in broken galactic common. Ethan shook his head. "I don't know what happened." The princess continued staring at him. Among her people, healing powers existed only in old legends told to children. Those legends spoke about a race that could give life instead of taking it. A race that disappeared thousands of years ago. A race known only by one name, the Life-Bearers. Before either of them could speak again, loud sounds echoed across the battlefield. Several ships appeared in the dark sky above them. Their symbols were not from the royal fleet. They belonged to the dark swarm. The princess's face immediately turned pale. "They came back," she whispered. Ethan looked toward the sky and tightened his grip on his weapon. He did not understand why his touch healed her. He did not understand why alien legends sounded connected to humans. But one thing was clear. The battle for their survival had only just begun. The dark ships of the dark swarm moved slowly across the red sky of Valaris 7. Their engines filled the air with a deep and frightening sound. Princess Lyra looked up, and fear appeared on her face. She knew those ships very well. They had attacked her fleet only hours earlier and almost destroyed the royal army. Ethan could see the worry in her eyes, even though she tried to remain calm. Ethan quickly checked his rifle and looked around the battlefield for cover. The area was full of broken ships and destroyed machines. There was nowhere safe to hide for long. The princess stood beside him and activated the scanner on her arm. Her expression became serious after reading the results. The enemy ships were sending ground soldiers directly toward their position. "We must leave now," Princess Lyra said in slow galactic common. Ethan nodded without asking questions. The two of them started moving through the ruins of the battlefield. Smoke covered the area and made it difficult to see far ahead. Every sound felt dangerous in the silence around them. Ethan remained alert while protecting the princess as they moved forward. After several minutes, they reached the remains of an old research station. Most of the building had collapsed during the battle, but one section was still standing. Ethan carefully opened the damaged door and looked inside. The room was dark, but safe for the moment. Princess Lyra sat down against the wall and finally allowed herself to breathe slowly. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Lyra looked directly at Ethan with confusion in her eyes. She touched the place where her deadly wound had been only minutes earlier. There was no scar and no sign of injury. According to Elorian science, such healing was impossible. Even their best medical machines needed days to repair such damage. "How did you do that?" Lyra finally asked. Ethan looked at his own hands and slowly shook his head. He had asked himself the same question many times since the strange light appeared. He was only a soldier from Earth. He had never seen anything like this before in his entire life. The event made no sense to him at all. Before Ethan could answer, the station's emergency computer suddenly turned on. A weak blue screen appeared in the middle of the room. Princess Lyra quickly walked toward it and activated the communication logs. The screen showed several messages from the royal fleet. Most of the messages repeated the same order again and again. "Protect the princess at all costs." Lyra lowered her head after hearing the message. She knew what it meant. Most of her soldiers were probably dead. The fleet had sacrificed itself to give her a chance to escape. Ethan noticed the sadness in her face but said nothing. Sometimes silence was stronger than words. Suddenly, another message appeared on the screen. This one was marked as highly secret information. Lyra opened it carefully and her eyes widened immediately. The message came from the Imperial Science Council itself. It described an ancient legend that had been hidden for thousands of years. Ethan stepped closer as she read the words silently. The legend spoke about a forgotten race called the Life-Bearers. They were said to carry healing energy inside their bodies. Their touch could heal wounds and save lives during war. Ancient records claimed that entire civilizations survived because of them. But the Life-Bearers had disappeared long before the modern galaxy was born. Lyra slowly looked toward Ethan. "The energy you used matches the records exactly," she said quietly. Ethan remained silent for several seconds. He wanted to reject the idea immediately. Humans had only reached the stars recently. Earth history contained no stories about magical healing powers. Everything he knew told him this was impossible. Yet the evidence stood directly in front of him. Before either of them could speak again, loud footsteps echoed outside the station. Ethan quickly moved toward a broken window and looked outside carefully. Several Dark Swarm soldiers were searching the area with scanning devices. Their weapons glowed with red energy as they moved closer. Somehow the enemy had already found them. Princess Lyra stepped beside Ethan and looked outside as well. There were too many soldiers to fight directly. The scanners would detect them within minutes. Ethan tightened his grip on his rifle while searching for another exit. The room suddenly felt much smaller than before. The danger was now standing right outside their door. Then one of the enemy soldiers stopped moving. His scanner pointed directly toward the station. "The human and the princess are inside," the creature said. Ethan and Lyra looked at each other in silence. The enemy commander slowly raised his weapon. "Capture the human alive." For the first time, Ethan realized the truth. The dark swarm was not hunting the princess anymore. They were hunting him. The enemy soldiers slowly moved closer to the research station. Their scanners flashed red as they searched every corner of the ruins. Ethan could hear their heavy footsteps outside the broken walls. Princess Lyra checked the station map on the old computer screen. There was only one escape path left. It was an underground tunnel built many years ago during the First Colony War. Without wasting time, Ethan and Lyra entered the tunnel and sealed the door behind them. The narrow path was dark and cold. Small emergency lights on the walls flickered as they walked deeper underground. The sounds of enemy soldiers slowly disappeared behind them. For the first time in many hours, they had a moment to breathe. As they moved forward, Lyra continued thinking about the healing power she had witnessed. The ancient records of her people were very clear. The life-bearers had vanished thousands of years ago. Some historians believed they never existed at all, yet the energy she saw around Ethan matched every detail in those forgotten stories. Ethan noticed her silence and looked toward her. "You are thinking about the healing again," he said. Lyra nodded slowly without stopping. "My people spent centuries searching for answers about that power." She looked directly into his eyes, and somehow it appeared in a human soldier. Ethan looked down at his hands once again. They looked completely normal. There was no light and no strange energy around them now. He remembered every second of what happened on the battlefield. The warm feeling had been real. The healing had been real. But he still could not explain any of it. Suddenly, the tunnel lights turned bright blue. A mechanical voice echoed through the corridor. "Unauthorized movement detected." Large metal doors began closing behind them. The old station defense system had activated automatically. Within seconds, Ethan and Lyra found themselves trapped. Before they could react, several security drones appeared from hidden compartments in the walls, their weapons charged with blue energy. The machines saw both of them as intruders. Ethan quickly stepped in front of Lyra and raised his rifle. The drones opened fire immediately. The battle inside the tunnel lasted only seconds. Ethan destroyed 2 drones with accurate shots, but more machines continued arriving. One energy blast struck Ethan's shoulder and threw him against the wall. His weapon fell from his hands and slid across the floor. Pain rushed through his body as he struggled to stand. Lyra quickly moved toward him. "Ethan, are you hurt?" Before he could answer, she noticed something strange. The wound on his shoulder was already disappearing. The burned armor repaired itself as the skin underneath healed. Ethan stared at the injury in complete shock. The healing was happening again. This time, he had not touched anyone. The golden light appeared around his body for only a few seconds before fading away. Lyra watched silently as the final wound vanished completely. Her hands trembled slightly. The ancient stories had never mentioned self-healing abilities. This changed everything she believed about the life-bearers. The last security drone suddenly stopped moving. Its scanner focused directly on Ethan. Then it spoke in an old language that Lyra barely understood. Identity confirmed. The machine lowered its weapon immediately. "Welcome back, Guardian." The tunnel became completely silent. Ethan looked confused. Lyra looked even more shocked. The drone slowly projected a star map into the air. One planet on the map glowed brightly in gold. Below the image appeared a single message: "The last sanctuary awaits your return." Before anyone could speak, the drone shut down forever. Ethan stared at the glowing planet on the map. "I have never seen that world before," he said quietly. Lyra slowly shook her head. "But somehow," she whispered, "that world knows who you are." At that exact moment, deep in the Dark Swarm flagship orbiting above the planet, the enemy commander received the same signal. He stood from his throne and looked toward the stars. After years of searching, He finally smiled. The Guardian has awakened. His red eyes narrowed with excitement. Prepare the fleet. The hunt begins now. The words of the Dark Swarm commander echoed inside the bridge of the giant warship. Hundreds of enemy vessels slowly changed direction toward the hidden signal. Their target was no longer Princess Lyra or the royal fleet. Every scanner in the sector searched for only one person now. The mysterious human called Ethan Cole had become the center of the galaxy's attention. Deep inside the underground tunnel, Ethan and Lyra studied the glowing star map left behind by the ancient drone. The golden planet remained bright while all the other stars slowly faded away. Strange symbols surrounded the planet in a language neither of them understood. Yet every time Ethan looked at the map, he felt something familiar inside him. It was as if the planet was somehow calling his name. Lyra activated her portable database and searched for information about the world. After several seconds, the screen displayed a shocking result. The planet did not exist in any modern records of the Galactic Alliance. According to official history, that region of space was completely empty. Yet the drone had shown the location without hesitation. Someone had hidden the planet from the rest of the galaxy. Before they could continue their investigation, the tunnel shook violently. Dust fell from the ceiling as explosions echoed above them. The Dark Swarm had reached the research station and started searching underground. Ethan immediately grabbed his weapon and looked toward the tunnel entrance. The enemy was getting closer with every passing minute. Their time was running out. Lyra quickly found an emergency transport chamber at the end of the tunnel. Inside stood a small shuttle covered with dust and old military symbols. The ship looked ancient but fully operational. As Ethan stepped closer, the shuttle suddenly activated by itself. Lights turned on across the control room without anyone touching the controls. Then a calm mechanical voice filled the chamber. Guardian recognized. Authorization accepted. Preparing transport sequence. Ethan and Lyra exchanged confused looks. The ship had recognized Ethan just like the drone had. Ethan slowly approached the control panel and touched its surface. Instantly, hundreds of stars appeared above the dashboard as a navigation map opened automatically. One route glowed brighter than all the others. It led directly to the hidden golden planet shown by the drone earlier. The ship had already chosen their destination. Suddenly, warning alarms filled the chamber. Enemy forces approaching. Estimated arrival time, 3 minutes. The sounds of blaster fire echoed through the tunnel outside. Ethan looked toward the entrance and knew the enemy had finally reached their position. There was no time left for questions or careful planning. Their only chance was to escape immediately. Staying behind meant certain capture. As the shuttle engines powered up, several Dark Swarm soldiers entered the chamber. Their commander stepped forward and pointed his weapon directly at Ethan. His red eyes remained fixed on the human soldier. For a moment, nobody moved inside the room. Even the air itself felt heavy with tension. The commander finally spoke. You do not understand what you are. His voice was cold and calm. The Guardians nearly destroyed our empire thousands of years ago. He took another step forward. We cannot allow history to repeat itself. Ethan stared at the commander in shock. He had never heard of Guardians before this day, yet the fear in the commander's voice sounded real. For the first time, Ethan wondered if his power was more dangerous than helpful. Maybe the galaxy feared humans for a reason, hidden in forgotten history. Before the commander could fire, golden light suddenly surrounded Ethan once again. The energy spread across the room like sunlight breaking through darkness. Every damaged machine inside the chamber repaired itself instantly. Even the broken walls of the tunnel slowly began rebuilding before their eyes. The Dark Swarm soldiers stepped back in fear. The Guardian energy, one whispered. It is real. The commander immediately lowered his weapon. For the first time in years, fear appeared in his eyes. Ethan looked down at his glowing hands in complete silence. The power was becoming stronger, and he was losing the ability to control it. As the shuttle doors slowly closed, the commander shouted one final warning. If you reach the sanctuary planet, the truth will awaken. His eyes narrowed as the ship lifted from the ground. And the galaxy will never be the same again. The shuttle disappeared into the stars. Behind them, an entire enemy fleet began the chase. Ahead of them waited a planet that should not exist, and somewhere on that hidden world waited the answer to who Ethan really was. The ancient shuttle traveled through space for several hours before finally reaching the hidden world. Ethan and Princess Lyra stood silently as the golden planet appeared before them. Huge oceans of light covered its surface, and giant crystal cities shined beneath the clouds. The planet looked alive in a way neither of them had ever seen before. It felt less like a world and more like a living memory. As the shuttle landed, thousands of lights appeared around them. Ancient machines slowly rose from beneath the ground and surrounded the landing area. Ethan immediately reached for his weapon, but the machines showed no signs of aggression. Instead, they lowered themselves respectfully toward him. Their actions looked almost like a greeting given to an old king returning home. A soft voice echoed across the valley. "Welcome home, Guardian." Ethan looked around in confusion. The voice came from everywhere at once. Then a tall figure made of golden light appeared before them. Its eyes focused only on Ethan. The being introduced itself as the keeper of the sanctuary. It explained that long ago the Guardians had protected life across the galaxy. They were not conquerors or rulers. Their purpose was simple. They healed worlds destroyed by war and protected civilizations from extinction. The keeper revealed the greatest secret of all. The Guardians were humans. Thousands of years earlier, ancient humans had traveled among the stars using powers now forgotten by history. Over time, disasters and wars forced humanity to leave the galaxy and return to Earth. As centuries passed, humans forgot their true origin. Their powers slowly disappeared and became nothing more than myths. Ethan stood silently as the truth settled in his mind. Humans were never new to the galaxy. They had once protected it. The healing power inside him was not an accident. It was humanity's forgotten gift returning once again. Before Ethan could ask another question, warning alarms suddenly echoed through the sanctuary. The Dark Swarm fleet had followed them across space. Hundreds of enemy ships appeared above the planet and prepared for attack. The commander wanted to destroy the sanctuary before the Guardians could rise again. The final battle had arrived. Princess Lyra looked toward Ethan with concern. "There are too many ships," she said quietly. Ethan looked toward the sky above the sanctuary. For the first time, he felt no fear. The golden energy around him slowly returned. The light spread across the valley and climbed into the sky above the planet. Every damaged machine inside the sanctuary came back to life instantly. Ancient defense systems that had slept for thousands of years activated once more. One by one, giant Guardian ships rose from beneath the oceans and mountains. The Dark Swarm fleet stopped moving. Their commanders stared at the ancient vessels in disbelief. The stories had been true after all. The Guardians had returned, and they were human. The battle that followed spread across the stars. Guardian ships protected the sanctuary while Ethan's power strengthened with every passing moment. Damaged ships repaired themselves during combat. Wounded soldiers returned safely to the battlefield. For the first time in history, the Dark Swarm faced an enemy that grew stronger by saving lives instead of taking them. Hours later, the enemy fleet finally retreated into deep space. The war that had lasted generations ended in a single day. Across the galaxy, millions watched the recordings of what had happened. They saw a human soldier heal the wounded and save entire fleets from destruction. Everything they believed about humanity changed forever. Days later, Princess Lyra stood before the Galactic Council. "The age of fear is over," she announced. "Humanity does not bring destruction. Humanity brings hope." Her words spread across every world in the Alliance. Ethan returned his eyes toward the stars above the sanctuary. He knew his journey was only beginning. Somewhere in the galaxy, more humans might carry the same forgotten power. Somewhere, more secrets still waited to be discovered. The Guardians had returned, and the stars would never forget their name again.